Hi, I'm Katie Stone. Welcome to Dystopia. This is the first in a series of videos designed to open new pathways into dystopianism for those unsure where to begin, or for the hardened dystopians out there to offer an opportunity to return to first principles, try and work out what drew you to dystopia in the first place. There are more learning resources, reading lists and ways to get involved on my website at katiemcgregorstone.co.uk. But for now, wherever you are on your journey with dystopianism and however much time and energy you have for this today, you're welcome. In this first video, I'm going to be talking about dystopianism as a genre. I'm going to be started off by asking, what is a dystopia? What do we mean when we call a text a dystopia? In the second section of the video, I'll be taking a bit of a step back and asking, what is a genre? Why would we group a certain kind of text together? What does that do to the text? And what are some of the challenges which face us when we try to label it in that way? And I'll end by talking about why I think it matters what a dystopia is, what we call it, how we define dystopianism. The main text which I'm going to be referencing in this video is Lana and Lilly Wachowski's 1999 film The Matrix. For those of you who have managed to go this far on the internet without seeing The Matrix or learning what it's about, I'll just give you a brief rundown. The Matrix is set in a dystopian future where a society of sentient machines has risen up and taken control of the earth. They've imprisoned the vast majority of humans within what they call the Matrix, a digitally simulated world. So the imprisoned people believe themselves to be just living their lives in the world as we know it. But in reality, their bodies are being farmed by the machines for energy. There is a remaining human city, a free city under the ground, where the resistors still live, and the film follows the human resistance to the machines, whose tactics include waking people up from the Matrix. One of these people is Neo, so we see Neo gradually realizing that he lives in a simulated world, learning about the machines, and then learning how to fight them. So I'm going to start by asking, what is a dystopia, which I think is a deceptively simple question. And I thought I'd start by looking at the dictionary, as good a place as any. So, the Oxford English Dictionary says that a dystopia is an imaginary place or condition in which everything is as bad as possible, opposed to utopia. I think this is a really terrible definition. I don't think it gets at all what dystopias are like and what's important about them. So I read this and I thought, okay, what do I think is wrong with it? And I decided that what I would do is go through a few examples of bad places that are not dystopian. So this term bad is obviously very vague. The idea that in a dystopia everything is as bad as possible seems wrong to me. So I'm going to take you through some other bad places which are not dystopian, so we can kind of hone in on what's specific about the badness of a dystopia by a process of elimination. I came up with this structure for this video, and then I had a meeting with my youngest friend Seb, where we read a book called That's Not My Dragon, and on each page there is a new dragon, and the text reads, "That's not my dragon, its tongue is too fuzzy," or its horns are too pointy, various other things like that. And so I was quite pleased really that I'd struck on exactly the same method of finding dystopia that the hero of this story takes to finding their dragon, finding what's special about it. Children are the best at learning, so I'm happy to follow in their footsteps. So that's what we'll be doing here today. We'll be doing That's Not My Dystopia. So that's not my dystopia. Dystopias are not hellish. I think the world where everything is as bad as possible is a hellish world, a world that is designed for the purpose of being bad, bad for its own sake. It's designed to punish, designed to torture, designed to frighten. There are elements of that in Dystopia. This is the scene where Neo first awakens into the world of the machines. All he's known before this is his normal life, working in an office by day, as a computer hacker by night, because it was the 1990s. And then now he finds himself in this kind of terrifying pod, surrounded by this blood-like plasma, penetrated by metal tubes and being fed the mushed up remains of other people's bodies. So very, very horrible, very hellish, right? But in the dystopia of the Matrix, what Neo quickly learns is that this setup is not designed just to be bad for its own sake. It's designed with a purpose in mind. So this is Morpheus, the man most responsible for freeing Neo from the Matrix as part of a team. And Morpheus explains to Neo that the people in the pods are not there to be tortured or to be punished. They essentially are batteries for the machines. They function as energy cells for the machines to extract from. So this is quite different from the idea of hell as a site of punishment or torture. After all, the people in the pods don't realise that they're there. They are blissfully unaware, living in the world of the Matrix in their mind, as their bodies are farmed. So, still bad, definitely, but not hellish. That's not my dystopia. Dystopias are not natural. There are lots of places which are bad to live because they are dangerous, because there aren't a lot of resources there, because they are hostile to human life. When a volcano is exploding at the bottom of the depths of the sea, in the vacuum of space, all of these are bad places to find yourself in, but they are not dystopian. And that's because dystopias are not natural. We see elements of this kind of hostile natural environment in dystopias. This is the surface of the world in the Matrix. It's a place where the sun never shines, so where life cannot go and thrive. It's a very hostile, bad place. But again, Morpheus is explaining this world to Neo, and he says that this isn't the product of a natural disaster. This isn't something that has naturally occurred. This is man-made. So it's the humans who have scorched the sky, blackened it, so that the sun cannot come through, in an effort to cut the machines off from what was at that point their main source of energy, solar power. So again, still bad, but not natural. That's not my dystopia. It's not traditional. There are many bad places which are bad because of the traditions that govern them. For example, places which are ruled over by a cruel king, a lord, a tyrant. These are certainly bad places for the majority of the people, for the oppressed peasant population that such a ruler often rules over, but they are not dystopian. And I think the key difference is that in these traditional bad places, the ruler would say that they rule because of tradition, because they have always ruled, because it is in their blood, because it's ordained by God, because of the past. They are appealing to the authority of the past. Things are as they are now because that's the way they've always been. This is not the logic of dystopias. Dystopias are forward thinking. For example, in the Matrix, the machines justify their rule not by saying they were always there, they weren't. They justify their rule by saying that they have the best ideas, the best way of doing things, that they are the most efficient, the most innovative, the most modern, that they are the society of the future. This is Agent Smith interrogating Morpheus. Agent Smith is the main antagonist in the Matrix. He is an agent of the machine world, a computer program designed to police the digital space of the Matrix. And he says to Morpheus, you, meaning humans, you had your time. The future is our world, Morpheus. The future is our time. So again, still bad, but not traditional. That's not my dystopia. Dystopias are not chaotic. Some places are bad because they're chaotic, because they're strange, they're surreal, they're confusing, because you don't know what's going on, because you feel like there are no rules and nothing that you can rely upon. Again, we see some of that in dystopias. Dystopias often are confusing and they have strange elements. This is a scene where Neo has just learned that the world he's known all of his life is a digital simulation. So technically, this mirror is not a mirror, it's just code, and you can stick your fingers into it and distort it. Confusing and strange, chaotic. And yet this isn't where we're left in the film of The Matrix. We don't just end up in this kind of crazy funhouse mirror where you don't know what's going on. Instead, what Neo learns to see is the code of the Matrix. He learns that nothing in the Matrix is chaotic. Nothing is out of order. Everything has been carefully programmed. Everything has been written precisely to follow certain laws. And what he wants to do is break those laws, maybe make it more strange, more chaotic, more confusing. But as it is, it's very ordered. So again, still bad, but not chaotic. So I hope what some of these examples have shown is why this definition doesn't work, or at least doesn't work for me. I've had a go at rewriting it here. So what I'm arguing is that dystopias are an imaginary place or condition which is bad in a way which is not hellish, natural, traditional, or chaotic, opposed to utopia. So I hope that some of these negative definitions give you a sense of what some of the characteristics of dystopia might be, and I'll go into those more in later videos. But for now, that's my dragon. Its wings are so scaly. We found him. In this next section of the video, I'm going to ask, what is a genre? We've thought about what a dystopia might be, but let's take a step back and think about, why are we labelling text as dystopian in the first place? Why is it useful to group certain texts together and say these are all part of the same thing? And to help me answer this question, I'm going to refer to Rick Altman's 1999 book, Film Genre. So Altman is a film scholar. This is a really interesting book which gives you very good history of genre criticism, as well as some very useful examples from Altman on his theories of what a genre is. And I'll be making a separate video delving more deeply into that. But for now, I'll just give you the outline of Altman's argument. So in Film Genre, Altman is basically saying that people think they know the answer to the question, what is a genre? They think that it's obvious, but they shouldn't be so sure. He says scientific justification of genre study, so treating genre study like a scientific pursuit, serves to convince theorists that genres actually exist, that they have distinct borders, that they can be firmly identified, that they operate systematically, that their internal functioning can be observed and scientifically described, and that they evolve according to a fixed and identifiable trajectory. He says, though we like to think of ourselves as objective and distanced from our objects of study, we too have objectives and needs. So what he's saying here is that when people approach a genre, they think that there is a definite answer to the question, what is a dystopia? That if you know enough about dystopianism, then you'll know what are all the characteristics of it, which texts are dystopian and which texts not. You'll be able to make hard and fast answers to those questions. And what Altman is saying is that it's not as clear as that. He talks about genres changing over time. He talks about hybrid, mixed genres. He talks about texts which sit at the borders of genres. Might be one genre that might be another. And more than that, he talks about how the position of the critic feeds into the answer you get when you ask, for example, what is a dystopia? So he says, the perceived nature and purpose of genres depend directly and heavily on the identity and purpose of those using and evaluating them. Genres are deployed differently by diverse user groups. Producers, exhibitors, critics and spectators all have their own purposes for using generic constructs and terminology. So what this means is that I, as a genre critic, might have very different priorities in mind when I'm saying this is a dystopia and this is not, to someone as a dystopia fan deciding which film to see at the cinema, or to a movie executive deciding which project to green light as they're trying to make the best new dystopia. He's really interested in how, if I say dystopia and I have The Matrix in mind, I'm going to paint you a very different picture of the genre than someone who says dystopia and they're thinking about a 20th century novel, or they're thinking about a 21st century game. He's interested in those differences, but he still maintains that it is possible to talk about genres. He doesn't say, oh, well, we all have our own definition. That means there are as many definitions as there are people, and there's no point really trying to get at what a dystopia is. Altman doesn't say that. Instead, he says that even within an overall atmosphere of imprecision, difference and contradiction, varying levels of agreement among viewers are possible. So this is what I'm aiming for in this video, not to convince you that my definition of dystopianism is the only possible one, but to reach a varying level of agreement about what dystopianism is. And to answer the question about why I've landed on this particular definition, I'm going to, in the final section of this video, ask, why does it matter? Why does it matter how we define a dystopia? Why does it matter what a genre is? What's the point? When I present you with my definition of a dystopia as an imaginary place or condition which is bad in a way which is not hellish, natural, traditional or chaotic, why is that better than any of the other definitions that we might come up with? And partly I want to say that I think that that's a convincing definition. I've tried to present some evidence for it here in my reading of The Matrix. I'm going to continue to do that within the other videos. So I think it gives you an accurate portrayal of the genre. But I'm highlighting these particular facets of the genre because I'm particularly interested in dystopianism. I think dystopianism is important because it is a political literature. So dystopias are not just about imagining an imaginary place and thinking about how bad it could be. They are about critiquing the ways in which our society already is bad in real life, I think dystopias allow us to see the ways in which our society is bad and to work out how to change them. And I think specifically they're focused on the ways in which life under capitalism is not hellish, not natural, not traditional, not chaotic, but still bad. So if we turn back to the world of the Matrix, I think this is what we will find. This is a scene where Neo is meeting with his boss, Mr. Reinhardt, before he's realised that he's living in the Matrix, before he knows anything about this being a digitally simulated world. It's still a bad world. So Neo has been out late, raving with Trinity, and he's turned up late to work, and Mr. Reinhardt calls him into his office, and he says, "You have a problem with authority, Mr. Anderson. You believe that you are special, that somehow the rules do not apply to you. Obviously you are mistaken. This company is one of the top software companies in the world because every single employee understands that they are part of a whole. Thus, if an employee has a problem, the company has a problem. The time has come to make a choice, Mr. Anderson. Either you choose to be at your desk on time from this day forward, or you choose to find yourself another job. Do I make myself perfectly clear?" "Yes, Mr. Reinhardt, perfectly clear." So this isn't the dystopia of the machine world. This isn't the dystopia where an agent of the Matrix will put a gun to your head and force you to obey. But still we can see how this world is bad in various ways. That Reinhardt wants Neo to bow down to his authority, that he doesn't value him as an individual with his own thoughts and feelings and desires. He values him only to the extent that he follows the rules, that he is a productive worker and a cog in the machine. And although he seems to have more freedom than if he was imprisoned in a pod in a human farm, the choices that are presented to him here are actually very limited. He has the choice to come to work or not come to work, but if he doesn't come to work, he has to find himself a job elsewhere. So this is a very limited framework he's moving in, right? He has to come to some form of office, some form of work, be the cog in some form of corporate machine which is designed to extract as much value from him as possible. I think what this shows us is that the dystopia of the Matrix extends beyond the science fictional world of the machines and into what we know as our reality today, life under capitalism. When we finish watching The Matrix, we aren't able to just think, "Oh, thank goodness The Matrix isn't real. I'm glad I don't live at a human farm." Instead, we have to think that some of the things that are being critiqued here are real, are felt in our reality, and that we need to find ways to combat them. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today, is some words from Facing Reality, the New Society, Where to Look for It and How to Bring It Closer, which is a political text, a kind of history of the state of society in the 1950s and various social movements that are working to improve it, written by the Trinidadian historian C.L.R. James, by the Detroit activist Grace Lee Boggs, or Grace Lee as she was known then, and the French-Greek philosopher Cornelius Castoriadis. So they collaborated on this book as a way of critiquing the society, the bad things that they saw of life under capitalism, and working out what are ways that we could use to combat it. And I want to read this next to The Matrix so that we can see how dystopias work as political texts, as critique of the bad things that do exist, which are not hellish, not natural, not traditional, not chaotic, but still are bad. So that's what I'm going to leave you with now. The whole world today lives in the shadow of the state power. The state power is an ever-present, self-perpetuating body over and above society. It transforms the human personality into a mass of economic needs to be satisfied by decimal points of economic progress. It robs everyone of initiative and clogs the free development of society. This state power, by whatever name it is called, one-party state or welfare state, destroys all pretense of government by the people, of the people. All that remains is government for the people. Against this monster, people all over the world, and particularly ordinary working people in factories, mines, fields and offices, are rebelling every day in ways of their own invention. Sometimes their struggles are on a small personal scale. More effectively, they are the actions of groups, formal or informal, but always unofficial, organised around their work and their place of work. Always the aim is to regain control over their own conditions of life and their relations with one another. Their strivings, their struggles, their methods have few chroniclers. They themselves are constantly attempting various forms of organisation, uncertain of where the struggle is going to end. Nevertheless, they are imbued with one fundamental certainty, that they have to destroy the constantly mounting bureaucratic mass, or be themselves destroyed by it. So, those are my thoughts on dystopianism, my attempts to answer the questions, what is a dystopia, what is a genre, and why does it matter? As I mentioned previously, there are more learning resources, reading lists and ways to get involved on my website at katiemcgregorstone.co.uk. But for now, thank you and you're welcome.